Thank you, everybody, for joining us on another edition of Dark Fringe Radio. Tonight, we have a very special guest. I'm very excited for her, and her name is Miss Lynn Monet, and she is a very world-renowned author of the five-star On the Present book series, On the Present, What Happens Next, On the Present, 111 Becca Dawn Drive, On the Present, Gnome, Place Like Home, which is being released this month, of course, and Colors of Heaven's Beginning Never End. And, of course, The Gap, What Your Adolescent Teen Needs to Know. She is a paranormal consultant, TV and podcast personality, a lecturer specializing in hauntings in the afterlife. She's an empath with the ability to see frequencies interdimensionally, which most cannot. She has been a nurse for over 20 years, which most have been in the end-of-life care management and geriatrics. She also has a degree in biological science. She has been a guest on Gaia with host George Nuri on Beyond Belief, Earth Files with Linda Moulton Howe, Coast to Coast AM, of course, again with George Nuri, Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott, After Hours AM with Joel Surgis, Darkness Radio with our friend Mr. Dave Schrader, and Bigfoot and the Bunny, the League Project with Rex Bear, Beyond Reality with J.V. Johnson, and so much more. Welcome tonight, our guest, Miss Lynn Monet. I hope you guys enjoy.
Dark Fringe Radio, your trusted source for the paranormal, conspiracy theory, and true crime.
Welcome to Dark Fringe Radio, Lynn Monet. Lynn, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy that you reached out. I've really been looking forward to this.
No. I'm really looking forward to it too. I want to talk about all the books. The last time we had you on here, and we just started talking about this before the podcast started, was when you came out with Omnipresent, the first one. Now you've come out with Omnipresent, What Happened Next, Omnipresent, 111 Becca Dawn Drive. Let's talk about those real quick if we can, just to to highlight those, and then we're going to get into, of course, the more recent things that you're going to be doing, the Omnipresent Gnome, Place Like Home, and of course Colors of Heaven. But let's talk about, if you can, about Omnipresent. Let's start with Omnipresent real quick, just to give everybody a refresher. Tell us a little bit about Omnipresent, and then where that evolved to.
Omnipresent is a book that I wrote after I was a single mother with two children looking for a home to live in. And I inadvertently, unbeknownst to me, purchased a house that was so haunted that we never moved in. And I had multiple denominations of religion in there. I had multiple witnesses that had things that happened to them, including claw marks, bite marks, bruises. But it was so haunted that I never did move in. And everybody always asks the question, well, what'd you do with it? Did you sell it? Yes, I did sell it. However, I did try to tell the people. There was an incident where they were coming down the stairs. It was a split level house with stairs that went down, stairs that went up, and we were coming down the stairs to the foyer to go out the front door. And I hear the wife say to the husband, "Why did you push me?" And he said, I didn't push you. She says, "Yes, you did. You pushed me." He says, "I'm 3 steps back from you. I didn't push you." And I knew what had pushed her. So when they came out, my conscience got the best of me, and I'm like, you know what? I can't do to them what I had done to me, because I know the people that sold it to me knew it, and I found out after the fact, which is where the book What Happened Next comes in. But anyway, so I said to them, do you believe in ghosts? And they immediately cut me off and said, "We don't believe in ghosts. We don't talk about ghosts. We're Baptists. We're protected." And then they ended up selling the house 6 months later. So so that's it in a nutshell. I learned during that time too that dark entities can attach to people and create pain. And a lot of times people that are suffering from pain, sometimes it's an attachment, and normally they wouldn't take like oxycodone or anything from it. But then sometimes they become addicted innocently, trying to relieve their pain when it's something else. And of course, the doctor can't find what the pain issue is, because it's something energetic and ethereal more so than physical. So going into Omnipresent, what happened next, I did reach out to the family that sold me the house afterwards, especially after, and just to back up a little bit, how I know that the people that I sold the house to had the house up for sale is I was coming down the interstate going to somewhere. I don't even remember where I was going, but the interstate was backed up and I had to get off of the exit that was the exit that headed towards that house. And I'm trying to get a road that's paralleling the interstate I-26 so that I can eventually get back on. But I ended up having to go on a cross street, not cross street, but a street that passed by the street with the house on it. And as I'm passing, I noticed out of my peripheral vision that there's a sign in the yard. And I'm like, so I had to know, is it a vote for so-and-so or what is it? Is it a for sale sign? And because of where it was placed, you couldn't tell if it was the house next door or the house that I had sold to people. So I went to the next street and I turned around and I'm sitting there. I say a little prayer for protection because I'm like, I have to know, what that sign is. So I turned around and I'm trying to be very inconspicuous and quiet. Of course, I did not want to have those people see me on the street because they might want to invite me in and I have no interest in doing that. So I turned down the street. The house was the second one on the left. And I go past, nothing happens. But when I turned around into the dead end to come back up towards the house, in front of the house, my radio turned itself on full blast. I couldn't get it to shut off. I couldn't get it to change channels, nothing. I left skid marks getting off that street. I did. And to me, it was like their calling card saying that, that we're still here. And we know that you're here too,
Scary.
So
That's a scary. Yeah.
Um,
And you being an empath, I mean, you pick up on that right away, right?
Usually, yes. Yeah. Well, 111 Becca, that's a whole new story. Here is the house. Nice house, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is the house. Look in the
Very
window.
innocent looking. Oh, yeah. Look at that window.
The window?
Oh, yeah. I see something in that window.
It's a demon.
Oh, no.
There's a glare. You see it now? There's a glare.
Oh, yeah, I see it. No, I see it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's creepy.
Yeah. There were two demons and a young man in that house. But just to go forward, because I'm not, do we have an hour or hour and a half?
We have plenty of time.
Okay. So what I did do when I passed the street, it was a for sale by owner sign. And of course, my heart just dropped into my stomach because I really thought, okay, maybe there's a latent effect of all of the blessings that I had done on the house and things like that maybe it finally took care of everything after the fact, or maybe these people, because they're Baptists and they don't entertain those sorts of things, maybe they've got some magic about them that they won't mess with them, or if they do, they won't notice anyway, type thing. So it broke my heart because I felt bad because I knew why they
but at the same time you knew, and then you also probably had a feeling too, right? I'm sure.
Yeah, I did. Thing was and like I said, I would have told them the truth if they had asked, if they had been willing to listen, so that they would know, and they didn't want to hear it. So I tracked down the people that sold me the house, and that goes into what happened next, because everybody wanted to know what happened next. After I left skid marks on that street, that's the last time I ever went back there. Don't ever plan on going back there again. But I contacted the family that sold me the house, and I finally, through the court records and things, tracked them down. And I sent a snail mail letter because I didn't have their phone numbers or like their emails or anything like that. So weeks go by and I finally get a response. The husband called me first. And I told him who I was, and he's like, "Oh, hello, how are things going?" And I said, "Did you know that the house was haunted when you lived here?" And he's like, "I think you need to talk to my wife." He didn't even want to entertain it, So
yeah.
He would have her call me back, and I mean, a while passed. I didn't think she was going to call me back, and finally she did, and she was like, "I am so sorry." She said, "I am so sorry." She said, "We were late to the closing." They were like 3 hours late to the closing of the house, because when she found out that I had children, she didn't want to sell me the house because their children, they had a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old at the time. And the little girl and the little boy would show up with these strange bruises and bite marks and different things. And the little girl would say to the parents that the monsters downstairs don't like me, type thing. And they were just thinking that she had like this invisible friend thing that was kind of creepy, So, but anyway, the thing was too, is that when the kids would go to school and the teachers would ask them to, draw a picture of their house or paint a picture of their house, they'd make the house with the one giant flower that comes up over the roof and then the family. But then on the opposite side, they had these 3 stick figures that were black and that were like blood coming from their mouth and stuff like that. And when the kids were asked, who's this? Oh, that's mommy and daddy and our dog. And who are these over here? Oh, those are the monsters that live downstairs in our house, would be their response.
So, okay. You have this situation going on with this family, obviously, right? Having this experience and the kids having this experience. How do you how do you approach a situation? Like there's no like textbook way to really like say, hey, listen, this is the way you should do it, and blah 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 blah, and go that way, right? How do you go forward in a situation like that where you're being oppressed constantly?
You mean as far as the people, or just as far as constantly running into spirits?
No. The people that are in that, that area, that time, how do you deal with that? Like, I mean, is it just...
I was very straightforward. I didn't care. They came and saw priests coming to the house while I was there. They saw, people burying silver coins at the corners of the lot type thing. And they saw a lot of people coming in and out of there. And I asked the guy next door, about the house. And I told him, I said, that house is haunted. And he said that the young man the house was built in the 1970s. So it wasn't built. So it's not about the age of the house. It's about the age of the ground that it's built on. So a brand new haunted if it's built in the wrong place. So, but the next door neighbor, who was the first person on the street, even before they paved it, back when it was a dirt road, told me that the people that originally built that house, their son hung himself in the stairwell. And he's still present in the house when I bought it. And there were 2 demons in there, one higher and lower level demon in the house, an actual demon. I mean, a lot of times people, they'll contact me, I got a demon in my house. But 90% of the time, it's not. It's
99%
just like,
of the time.
It's a bodied soul, or it's an or a fae in their house, and they assume that because it's short that they have a child walking around their house, and you have to handle things differently in both of those situations. But I did find them, and they went on to tell me that being in that house almost ended their marriage because of the strange. One would come into the kitchen and the water would be running and accuse the other one of turning it on. And they're like, I didn't turn it on. And they were constantly fighting, about leaving the water on in the sink, and her knocking on the door while he's trying to sleep during the daytime because he worked nighttime, and she wasn't even home. And he would get up, and he would assume that she did that. So they were constantly interfering, with these people.
Do you think the demons in that house were the ones, the catalysts, were doing that?
Oh, of course. Yeah, of course they were. They didn't want the people there. And the thing is, and I think that the young man that hung himself, they were the catalyst for him to hang himself. He didn't hang himself, and then the demons came. The demons were already there. And
that's the question I wanted to know. Yeah, that's what that's the basis of what I wanted to know. I wanted to know if the demons were there before, or did he kind of like bring these entities in?
No, they were there. As a matter of fact, the last lady that came to the house was American Indian, and she brought a friend with her. And when they pulled up into the driveway, she looked at the house and she said, "You know what? If your house had been built 3 feet over, it wouldn't be haunted."
Wow.
Then she pointed to the house catty corner across the street and the one behind it and said, "I bet that house is haunted, and the other one is haunted too." And she was right. Literally, in the 8 months that I owned that house, 3 different families moved in and out of that one that was catty corner across the street. And then the one behind it, nobody ever lived there. It was banked up and it just sat empty. So she was correct. But she talked about the ley lines and the vortexes, the positive and negative, and how they were tunneling. They would do like this spiritual tunneling, and somehow the house, when they built it, kind of broke into that area, which then gave them a path to come up through. The fireplace served as a portal, so they were able to come up through the fireplace into the house. And
So you're telling me that, and excuse me for interrupting. So you're telling me because they built this place on a certain area where there's ley lines, all this stuff is happening because of that.
yes.
That's so crazy. I know, and I believe it. I believe it too. I
Well,
mean,
no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, no, but it's just people don't realize like the importance of ley lines, the importance of things that are in the ground, like the elements that are in the ground. That has a lot to do with what you feel above the ground as well, I would assume, right?
Yes,
So yeah, so if you could explain the ley line, theory to my listeners, for some of those that don't know or are not aware of that.
okay. There are ley lines that connect from pole to pole all over the earth. And the thing about the ley lines is they're energetic. So
Hmm.
they attract certain kinds of energy and they give off certain kinds of energy depending on where you are at with that. They also have these vortexes that kind of branch off a little bit, kind of like a tree type thing. And there's always a positive and a negative with that as well. But the thing
Hmm.
with the ley lines, for instance, is a lot of very spirit, like the Egyptians used to build their pyramids on the ley lines, and they were perfectly exactly on those ley lines for energetic purposes. Even that headstone place where the stones were, that is on a ley line. So there are, if you follow a ley line, you're going to find a string of very, very important energetic buildings on it, different, like I said, is it hedgestone? Stonehenge. I'm sorry, Stonehenge.
Stonehenge. No, yeah,
Yes,
Stonehenge. Yeah.
yeah, and so it being energetic, it gives off and it draws, but because it is energetic, and it's in between, kind of in between the dimensions. If you are looking at it, that way, it helps to energize things that are not embodied, physical bodied form, to be able to do more physical acts. Type, if that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense too. So if they don't have a person around to feed off of, then they go feed off your fuse box. They feed off the ley lines in the ground if there is one on there. Now, not the ley lines are spread far enough apart that like you'll have one going through a whole neighborhood, but usually it's a trail, and you'll be able to see where the the people that are having the most activity are because of it. So,
Mm-hmm.
in a nutshell, it's a lot more complicated than that. But in a nutshell, it's just those lines that go from pole to pole all over,
Mm-hmm.
and there's straight lines that go all over the globe and cover it. So kind
Mm-hmm.
of like a basketball, kind of like
Yeah,
you sit it up on them, but there are a few more lines. There's more lines than just that, but kind of like a basketball.
makes
So
sense. It makes sense. Yeah.
yeah.
And for somebody like yourself, like you're an empath, once you start getting into some of these ley lines, I'm sure that everything's amplified, right? I mean, I would assume at least, just by thinking in a scientific, standard and thought form, like if you're in a ley line, you're obviously going to be responding to a lot of these things in a lot more of a sensitive way. Where
Sure.
I'm going with that is this, is that when you get called on some of these things and some of these things happen around you, is it hard for you to say, hey, listen, this is what's going on, and try to, like, elaborate that to somebody else who doesn't have any idea what you're talking about? If somebody has like no idea of, ley lines and things of energies of that nature, and they're just a common person that just doesn't really get into any of that kind of stuff, is it hard for you to convey that message to people, or no?
No, I'm very straightforward, and I'm at the
Hmm.
age, I'll be 62 in May, and I don't give a shite.
By the
So,
way, you look great for 62.
um, so no, I don't. As a matter of fact, I talk about it all the time. But I have to tell you
Mhm.
something funny. I didn't real
Please.
I didn't realize what a weirdo I was, because all of the people that I associate with are like us,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you don't realize why you're getting dirty looks at the table in a restaurant, because you're talking amongst people that are all talking about the same things, and people that overhear it are like, what? those people
Hmm.
are crazy. But is that oh gosh, I just lost my train of thought. Oh
It's
no,
okay.
but I don't have a problem. I have two types of people, and I'll tell you the stupid thing that I did too. Two types of people. Some people that will come and say, you know what? There was a rocking chair in my grandmother's house that used to move itself out into the middle of the hallway every night when I was little. So they come forward with their things and they feel so wonderful finally to be able to tell somebody because they're validated by it. Then you get the other ones that look at you like there's a bad stench in the room and they want to walk off as fast as they can.
Yeah, yeah,
Store after the Hurricane Helene came through and raised
yes.
havoc. I was without electric for like 5 days, but
Oh,
when after she came through, I was in the grocery store and I overheard these two people talking about North Carolina and how bad they had gotten hit. And I kind of joined into the conversation and I'm talking about weather manipulation and how there are 157 patents on weather manipulation. And all they have to do is fly a drone and sprinkle chemicals into the clouds to make them do the boogaloo. I said,
throw some
because
silver in there and some other
yeah,
stuff in there, right? Yeah.
I mean, they spawn tornadoes in the mountains. That's
Yeah,
unheard of. You
yeah.
can't. So, and
If
these
they could make
people,
it rain, right, in over there
exactly,
in the Middle East, right?
yes, exactly.
Right.
But
Yeah.
because they want to manipulate everything. But
Correct.
and I didn't realize in that moment until both of them stood there silent, just looking at me like this. Oh, thank you. Have a nice day. I walked off and then we started mumbling to each other, and I had to chuckle because I'm like, you know, to me, I talk about it all the time, and you know what? Nobody doubts me. They just know they can feel my heart. You know what I'm saying? They can feel my heart.
You're a
And
genuine person. Yeah,
exactly. So
you are.
I've never ever had anybody, disputed. I've had more people come forward and want to share their experiences as well. And then I when I closed on that house, as a matter of fact, I contacted the attorney afterwards and I had asked him, I said, look, I want to get out of this mortgage. How do I get out of this? And he's like, well, why? I said, well, the house is haunted. And he says, really? And I said, yeah, it is. He said, no, it's not haunted. And I said, yeah, it is. As a matter of fact, if you want to bring your family, your wife and your kids, the bedrooms are furnished, the electric is on, the water is on, everything that you could possibly need. You can bring your toiletries and you can come and stay the weekend all alone in the house. And he
Hmm.
said, no, thank you. But you know what's funny?
What's that?
After that, I bought another house that was not haunted, and I had used him as my closing attorney. And he said to me,
Hmm.
"You know what?" He says, "I was in a closing a couple of days ago." He said, "And I could feel something touching me while I was sitting in the chair."
Oh no.
He did. So all of a
Oh
sudden, now
no.
he's telling me because he's noticing. So the thing is all of us really have a connection with that. We really do know, but either the way that you're nurtured makes you afraid of it so that you run, away from it, or it's nurtured and it develops more so. And me being born in 1963, I mean, when I was growing up, you didn't talk about things like that because you would literally have the men in white coats pull up and take you away for a lobotomy. So, you just kind of kept that quiet. And I was seeing things even as a little girl, different things that my brother and I were in the room at the same time and we were seeing things.
You know what, Lynn? That actually is a great segue into one of your newest books, Gap. This is something that's great. I think this is something that is not talked about enough in our, whatever you want to call it, circle or niche, whatever you want to call it. But Gap, what else your adolescent and teen needs to know. So this is very interesting. I think this is something that needs to be talked about more because I think that where we're missing the I don't know. I guess where we're missing the point in all of this when it comes to this stuff is that, as teens, we have or we feel these things like what you said earlier, and that's what that prompted me to talk about this. But you felt this thing that you were developing at a young age, and already going through adolescence is already tough enough, and then having that extra layer on top of it of having these extra abilities is just like how do I deal with it? How do I navigate the waters of all this? But talk to us a little bit about Gap and tell me a little bit more about this book.
Okay. Well, Gap I actually was looking for a book for my daughter, and I had a late life baby at 46. So my two oldest children are in the Omnipresent book, and then I had a baby afterwards, which she just turned 16. So, but I was looking for a book that would bridge the gap in between. And it does talk, it gets kind of into spiritual stuff, but it kind of talks more about, what to do if a condom breaks, how to set boundaries, how to make friends that are, healthy relationships. And not that I'm encouraging your kid to have sex, but if they are having sex, they need to know what to do if a condom comes off.
Absolutely.
Protect their future. And people, please read it first before your kids do, because it's not candy coated. There's no then there are pictures of anything, naked parts. It's none of that. The description is enough. Type thing. However, there are pictures of trunk releases from the inside and crowbars and where to find them, just in case you get abducted and thrown in a trunk, or you from the back seat into the trunk to get away from somebody, and you want to have that crowbar to whack them in the head with. But it talks about all kinds of things like that. What to say to save face, because somebody, like if somebody approaches you and says, "Hey, can I drive your car to the McDonald's?" You need to say, yeah, I'm sorry, I can drive you there because you're not insured. So you don't have to give them your keys. Or if they come up and say, "Can I borrow money?" "Oh, wow, I'd really like to. Is there any other way I can help you? Because I'm not able to give any money." So they have that out, so to speak, so that the person doesn't get angry with them. So, things like that, because kids just don't know what to say. And the hard part of the book is that I had to write it gender neutral. So
that's true too. Yeah.
Microsoft kept trying to correct me.
He, she.
Yeah, he, she, they, them. Well, there's so many. It talks about the gender movement type thing, but it also talks about that it's okay to be who you are and what you were born as. We're loud, we're proud, type thing. It gets into that as well, and talks also about some spiritual things. I'm going to be doing a sequel to that gets into more of the spiritual part of it type thing, to let people know that it's okay. These gifts, right now the frequencies are changing so much around us, and they're elevating. So
it's crazy right now. Yeah.
A lot of times you're going to start to notice people falling away and kind of disappearing out of your life, and the thing is, it's because you're going to be matching with people of the same frequencies is where we're headed with that. And it's not that people are going to die, it's just, you'll
people come in and out of your life.
Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah. I haven't talked to Joe Schmo in forever, and I wonder how he's doing. And then you just go on your way and you forget to call or whatever, but you haven't seen the person in years, and then you probably won't see them again. So these people, they're starting to fall away. But that's where the gap comes in. It talks about, your first date, put your phone away. Don't wear stinky sneakers on your first date, because there's nothing to use. And no matter how beautiful you are, if your feet stink and the windows are up, nobody wants to do that.
Yeah. That's a good point. That's a very good point, Lynn. Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, talk about stuff too, I've had a couple of parents read it, because I was a urological nurse for 3 years, and they came back and they're like, "You know what? I didn't even know that." It tells you how to put a condom, leave the reservoir at the end, put your hand on the base of it when you pull out, so it doesn't come off inside of the person. So
yeah.
These kids don't know, the reservoir, they're supposed to get it all. I mean, it's just, so it goes.
But it's so true. It's so true. Everything you're saying right now is so true.
It is. The first section, it is called My Privates, and it talks about nothing stinky about sex. If it's stinky, you need to get some soap and water and wash it.
Yes. There's some issues going on there. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, bumps on it, tears on it, and it's stinky. Don't touch it. Don't lick it. Don't kiss it. Hey, make like Pink Floyd and what is it? What is the wording that I used? Run like hell.
Run like hell?
Yeah. So
that's so great. I mean, you're right though. You're so right. And you know what it is? It's so It's blatantly true. And that's what the thing is. People, it's hard for people to take it, because it's like it's right. Everything you're saying is 100% correct. And anybody that's going to sit here and say, "Oh no, that's not right. You can't say things like that." No, that's exactly how you're supposed to say it, and that's exactly how you're supposed to approach it. These types of subjects. And
Yeah.
I applaud you for that. That's great. I think that's a good thing. I think that's a great thing. You know what I mean? Because a lot of times people try to just like sugarcoat things and it doesn't work out. It doesn't resonate. It doesn't resonate with the people that you're trying to get through to in the first place. So you kind of lose them in that way. You know what I mean? And when you talk to them the way you talk to them like that, Lynn, I think that's what really kind of resonates with them. Really, honestly.
Yeah, like I said, it's not candy coated. It's not vulgar, but very straightforward. It comes from a medical standpoint, not just
Hmm.
my opinion. It doesn't come based on religion. It just comes on what is. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So, and I mean, and in the end, it tells you how to clean out a refrigerator from top to bottom and what, like,
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
they need to know this. They need to know
Yeah.
this.
What a good box of baking soda won't do, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
Right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Kids don't know about that, right?
Wash dishes on the front and back.
Yeah. Oh my God. What a novel idea.
Yeah. All of them are used to having dishwashing machines. And when the dishwashing machine breaks and you got to wash them by hand, half of them will
Mm.
wash the front and then stack it on a dirty back on top of a clean plate. And so it
Well,
totally defeats the purpose. So,
absolutely. Yeah. And Lynn, let me give you a little secret here in the Hispanic households. The dishwasher is not used as a dishwasher. It's used as a area where you keep your Tupperware. We store
well,
Tupperware in there. We don't clean shit. I'm sorry, excuse my language. We don't clean anything with the dishwasher. We use everything by hand. We clean everything by hand.
there you
And
go.
it's so weird. It's so weird, but it's just like it's ingrained. Even to this day. You go into my dishwasher right now. I will gladly take you and show you that there's nothing but Tupperware in there and Pyrex,
Oh my,
dishes. Yeah.
that's funny because you know what I do? Mine is full of food. Like, because I figured, if the shit hits the fan, I'm sorry. Let me say,
Yeah.
if
No,
the
no, that's fine.
if the shit hits the fan, and they come in, people are going to be robbing you for your food. They're not going to
Right.
look at the washer for food.
That's true. You're right about that.
All the stuff, but I'll still have some leftovers in the dishwasher machine too. But it's
uh,
yeah, it was a necessary book. What
yeah.
when you wash towels in white towels in with one red one and they all turn pink, what do?
Oh
You just
Lord.
you don't dry them. You take the red
Yeah,
one, wash it again, and then they turn
that's
white.
right. There you
So
go.
they don't know that. So, but anyway,
Oh
that
my God.
is about with the it also talks about some mental illness and things like that in that book.
Oh, I'm
And
glad you talk about that. Yeah.
yeah, and also in my second book, Omnipresent, I had gone back to school to further my degree and later in life, and I had a psych class, and we had to go into institutions to follow clients, and
Oh,
because of the ability to see things, I mean, a lot of things happened in those situations. I remember we went into it was a group of 8 nurses and an instructor, and we went into this one area where there were people just kind of mulling around, and the nurse was telling us it was kind of sad, this one place, because their children, nobody came to visit them anymore because they thought they were crazy. And
oh
there's this
wow.
lady sitting at this round table, and she's sitting there and she's having a conversation with the three other chairs at the table, and she's being this wonderful hostess. She's the way that she's talking, you can almost understand what the response from whatever it is she was talking to was. And the nurse says, she says, "Oh, well, that's so and so," and she's talking to people that aren't there. But I could see the spirits in
Oh.
the other chairs that she was seeing. I could see them, and of course I couldn't say that because they would have admitted me. But and
Mm.
then other things, I saw archon type attachments on people with addictions. I saw these other things on people with schizophrenia that had attachments, and so I've been able to kind of help people with some of that too, because I've taken them off of people, not the ones with addiction, There's certain processes you have to go through. The difference between it's the same where you kind of have this thing whispering in your ear, but when it comes to alcohol and drug addiction, it was invited there. So you have to do your part to uninvite it. With things like when there are attachments on people, it's usually because of a trauma that has occurred when they were little, where they have left cracks in what I call their windshield of their auric field and have enabled things to be able to attach to them uninvited. So those things I do take off of. I've been able to take off of people. So I learned a lot about that with my gifts. And when the medical field runs for a pill for everything. You've got people with what they call mental illness, which some people do legitimately have chemical imbalances, but there are a lot of them in there that are empaths, literally, that there's nothing really wrong with these people. And because the medical field wants to treat everything with a pill, they treat your physical body, they treat your mental body, but they don't treat that energetic body, which hopefully they're going to start to shift into in the coming years with the new generations that are coming out. They don't consider that part. They only deal with what they can see. So when you have a person that is mentally ill talking about seeing ghosts and people walking around, they're hallucinating. Well, no, they're not.
Maybe they're not.
Yeah, so they're giving them the lithium and the other pills for that. Then when you've got people on the flip side that are getting ready to pass, they're also talking about people in the room. And then they run and get the Seroquel and the Buspar for them because they're hallucinating when they're not. And I've got some beautiful stories in my book, Colors of Heaven, Beginnings Never End.
Next thing we're going to talk about. Absolutely. Yeah. No, I'm glad you brought that up because, I mean, I get so frustrated when people just dismiss things like that. You know what I mean? And they just like, oh, no, crazy.
It is, and especially with children.
How many people have been, I would love to know, like, if there was a number, how many people were misdiagnosed by saying, oh, they're crazy versus, oh, maybe this person is an empath and maybe they actually can see something.
I would say more than half.
Yeah. That's scary. That's scary.
It is. There was a young lady, we had come in, the group of 8 nurses, we had come in, and I'll go back to Colors of Heaven, had come in with the instructor, and there was this one young girl. She was wearing like a tank top with spaghetti straps and shorts. So you see her midriff and her back and her legs. And the reason why I'm telling you this, she had very short hair. She was a little bit more voluptuous.
That's okay. We like voluptuous here at Dark Fringe Radio.
The teacher left us standing there to go and get our assignments. And this was the intake area. We actually had to sign papers that if anybody hit us or bit us or did something to us, that we couldn't hold the facility responsible.
Wow.
So
okay.
I walked up and she points at me and she says, "You can help me. I know you can." And I'm like, please, I want to be Lynn the student nurse today, not Lynn the weirdo. I hope she talks to somebody else. And just then the teacher comes by, don't make eye contact. And she got out of the room. But another nurse and I got placed back in that section. And we were sitting at they had picnic tables bolted to the floor. And we were sitting at the picnic tables doing our charting. And the young woman comes over and sits down with us, kind of with her opposite. I was sitting with my legs under the table and she was kind of leaning her back up against the table with her feet going the other way. And I'm looking at the woman, and she's telling us that she was molested by her pastor from the age of 10 to like 14. Then her mom got remarried and the stepfather started raping her, and she ran away at age 16 and started doing devil worship. And she realized that wasn't something that she wanted to stay involved in. And she said, so now she hears 25 different voices, and her with schizophrenia. And the thing is I'm looking at this woman and she is covered in claw marks. She had claw marks coming out of
physically you could see this, or this was like something that you saw beyond?
Well, when I bought the house, the original house, my best friend was clawed to the point of bleeding standing next to me in that kitchen. These claw marks looked the same as the ones that my friend got in the house when there were 2 demons in the house that were attacking us. She got one between her shoulder blades and one on her stomach. This girl was covered in them. They were on her back, coming out of her ear, coming out of her nose. And she was saying that one of them had a very long fingernail that was scratching her and clawing her on the inside of her female parts. And the facility was stating that they were all self-inflicted. But if you could see the angle that some of these claw marks were, there's no way she
Her
could have
hand
done.
could get there, right? Yeah.
Yeah, she had to have been a contortionist. I mean, you can
Yeah.
only reach so far, you know? And so
Mhm.
I'm looking at her, and then she got up and she was called away. They have like these different modules that they go into group therapy, or they go into therapy one-on-one or with their social worker or whatever. She was called away. And when she got up to walk away, I'm looking at her, and on her back, she had all of these heads. They looked like they were about the size of potatoes, but they were clustered together like grapes. Some of them were inverted with their faces on the bottom, their eyes on the bottom and mouth on the top. And I looked, and I'm like, oh my God.
That's disconcerting.
She really is hearing 25 different voices. She's got attachments on her back. And
so is that a depression at that point? Is that what that is?
How do you mean? How do you mean?
Where instead of like a possession versus an oppression versus well, you know what I'm saying? Like the difference between the two.
Okay, yes, it is. Yes, that's exactly what it is. And the thing is with the schizophrenia, they think that the voices are in their head, but they're actually in their ear. Mm. They're not. And that's like with the archons. Sometimes they'll align and hide when they see me coming with people with addiction. But anyway, this young lady came back to her room, and my patient was like 3 doors down, and I knocked on her door frame, and she told me that I could come in. And I said, look, what I'm about to tell you, if you repeat it, they're going to think that you're crazier, and they're going to keep you here longer. I said, I believe that you're hearing 25 different voices because you've got attachments on your back. And her face became disgruntled, and she turned to walk away, and they were connected at the top of her shoulder. And this thing came around underneath her armpit, and it looked like a twisted grapevine that was hollow like a horn. It was with a brown thing to it. And I put my fingers underneath it, and I pulled it away, and they all started to fall to the ground. I started stomping them into the ground the best that I could. And some of them managed to roll away. And I told her, she turned around. Now her face was no longer disgruntled. It was softened. And she said to me, it felt like you were pulling grass off of my back.
Grass.
Yes. And
That's so weird.
Grass off. And I said to her, she didn't know what I had done. And I said, listen, I've removed a major portion of your attachments. However, some have rolled over by your bed, and they can reattach. I said, so when you get out of here, you need to go and find someone that can perform a ritual for you to remove all of the rest of them. And I kid you not, a year later, I'm in Walmart. I'm squatting down looking at the candles, and these 2 young women are at the end of the aisle whispering to each other. And I hear them saying, and one saying, well, I know that's her. At first I'm checking my shoe, see if there's toilet paper or maybe my zipper's down. I'm feeling self-conscious. And then I'm like, oh, well, maybe, type thing. And so the one girl walked over, and she said to me, she said, do you remember me? And I kind of remembered her, but she looked so different. I mean, she looked ashen. Her life was being sucked out of her by those things that were leaching on her back. And here she was a pink. She had lost weight. She had this cute little blonde bob, had her makeup on. And I'm looking at her, and I'm like, yeah, you kind of look familiar. She says, you're the nurse. And then it hit me, and I'm like, oh God. Yeah. I'm like,
you knew at that point, right?
Yeah, I'm like, oh my gosh. And she said, I did what you said. And she said, and now I'm just on a low dose of anxiety medication as needed. And she was getting ready to go into her 2nd year of dental hygiene school.
Oh, that's so
it had turned her life around, having them taken off of her, but she did do what I asked her to do. And apparently she found somebody, to help her with it. But that's why I'm saying more than 50% are something in the energetic field that is creating that interference, trying to feed off of them. Because when people have addictions, or when people have, depression or something like that, they have rings of what they call it lush, which, like, if you are arguing or have any negative type emotions, you give off this lush, which to them is like chocolate. They feed on it. So when they've got a good thing going, and somebody, if you have a person, let's just say, that has an active alcohol problem, that lush ripples into the family. It doesn't just affect the addict, it causes job loss and divorce, sometimes promiscuity, sometimes it's a gateway for drug use. It might even affect the neighbors if you're drunk and you drive through their house. So it does affect other people with that ripple type thing. And there are predators that are standing around feeding off of that. And of course, when you take that away, because they're creatures of habit, they don't like it. So they'll do whatever they can to trip you up for you to either start drinking or using your substance again, so that they can reattach and continue to feed. So, it's just, people don't realize, you can you've got to keep your auric field strong and puffed out. Put salt in your shoe, or take your salt baths, whatever it is that you can do to have that salt. And I'm saying pink Himalayan salt or sea salt, not Epsom salt. That molecularly will match up with your energy field and your frequency field, and it'll protect you. It'll help protect you. I also these all the time. It's an iron bracelet. My friend Nathaniel.
Why iron? If you don't mind me asking.
What's that?
Why iron?
Because iron is what they used to put around the cemeteries to keep the roaming ghosts inside. I had a demonologist, Nathaniel Gillis, tell me about this. So I'm familiar with Nathaniel. Yeah. He's great. He's my brother from another mother. Aww. But he was the one that told me about this. So I never take it off unless I'm in an airport, and I slip it in my purse, let it go through the check, and then I put it right back on. So because I go into situations where I'm dealing with this stuff a lot. Yeah. The colors of heaven.
I was going to get right into that. Yeah. And yeah, please. And let's get into that. Colors of Heaven, beginnings never end. Talk to us a little bit about this book. I love the idea of, heaven, right? Who doesn't, right? My mother passed away 3 years ago. Oh, so no, thank you. I appreciate that. So you when you have somebody that's close to you that passes away from you, you always want to think of okay, yeah, they're going to go to a heaven type of scenario, right? Talk to us a little bit about Colors of Heaven, if you could.
Oh, I would love to. Colors of Heaven, I wrote after seeing my mother cross over. And I'm here to tell you, people, if you believe in the alien theory and you believe in the heaven theory, they all come together in that one place. So they're both right. Everybody's right. So if I could start, I'll start with my mom's passing. Please. Okay. Please. The thing about people is a lot of times when they're getting ready to pass, they know it. So you'll start hearing them talk about, oh, so-and-so, if something happens to me, will you make sure that my son gets my cat? Or like in my mother's case, she was going around in a wheelchair in hospice saying goodbye to all of the people that she had met and told them, I'm going home tomorrow. She even told one lady who had just had her dog put down 3 days earlier that she would care for the dog until the lady had her chance to cross over to retrieve the pet. And sure enough, my mom, she passed away that next day. But the thing is that I was in her room with her, and my mom was sitting at a slant, and she was, and I'd like to say this too. A lot of times souls will choose to stay in body until the very last minute. Other times they'll even leave a day early. They can leave 30 minutes early, 15 minutes early, be standing right next to you. And then the physical body just finishes.
And let me pause you real quick right there. That is interesting because that just completely blows my mind. Okay. So you're saying that the soul could actually leave the body a day before, or in a certain circumstance, a day before they actually pass.
Yes, and they leave the physical body there to finish. So in Mom's case, she decided to stay in until the last minute. And this was obvious because she was sitting at a slant. She was no longer able to verbalize or open her eyes. But when you would say something to her, she would respond with moving her eyebrows up and down and trying to mouth words. And it was appropriate. People would come in the room and say, hi, Phyllis, and she would in response. So as I'm sitting there, I noticed that the room on the opposite side of her bed was filling up with ectoplasmic mist, floor to ceiling, wall to wall. I could see movement sticking through it, sometimes a pant leg, sometimes a shoulder. And yes, people, they do show up in clothes. Nobody wants to see mom naked when you have your turn to cross over. And in the nude, you're gonna be asked her to go please put some clothes on.
I've always wanted to know if my mom was like ever like looking into me. I was in the shower, like, no, get out of the shower. No. This is not the place.
Well, it may not be your mom, but you never know, if something else follows, because they but so as I'm sitting there, I'm watching this, and this area up towards the head of my mom's bed starts to efface, and this arch area opens, and my grandmother walks in. We called her Grandma Girl. It was my mother's mother. And she looked the exact same as I had seen her the last time. And that's the thing too. They will show up as you remember them last, healthy. So like if someone has deteriorated from cancer down to 50 pounds, they're not gonna approach you with the 50 pounds. They'll approach you the last time you saw them healthy. So when my grandmother came into the room, she had on this little leisure suit that she had made for herself. She even presented in glasses, because she had glasses, this little tight 80s curly perm. And she was standing on the opposite side of my mom's bed from me. And she would stroke the inside of my mom's forearm. And then she leaned forward and said something in my mother's ear. And my mom responded as my grandmother was coming away. And this happened 3 times. Now, the thing about transitioning is that people, as they get closer to death, their filters start to efface. And they have the ability to hear the telepathy from the spirit realm, as well as the physical speech coming from the embodied souls. So my grandmother does this 3 times. I see this frantic wave behind my grandmother's head. And all of a sudden, my sister's perfume just fills the room. It was my beautiful sister Robin. She was murdered when she was 21 by a Baptist minister's son.
Sorry.
Who got off, by the way. Anyway, so she was waving frantically, and she came around the crowd and actually embraced me. I could feel her hair falling over my face. I could smell her perfume and just feel her essence. And when she went to go back around, the whole wall had effaced, so it was wide open. I mean, there are colors there that you would need 10 other color wheels to even create some of the colors there. My new favorite color is over there, and there's no way to describe it. But the thing is that I'm noticing I'm getting to look in and glimpse into. There was this tablecloth. They were actually setting up a reception for her. A very beautiful reception. Remind me towards the end to tell you what my mom said about food. But so anyway, I'm looking at this, and the feeling of the love and elation that comes from that other side that envelopes you, you can't help but sit there and smile when you're in the presence of all of that love. And for that moment, I'm like, I want to come too, but then you got to let me come back at 4:00 so I can pick up my kids. Type
I got
thing.
things to do.
Yeah. So I said to my mom, I leaned over, I kissed her cheek and held her hand. And I said, Mom, Grandma and Robin are here to take you home. It's time to go home. And she mouthed and she did her. I said, I'll be okay. Well, we'll see each other again. This is, and if people could understand that death, you are going to see them again. So, the death has such a finality to it, which is why I wrote the book Colors of Heaven, to help take that stigma away. Really, people should be celebrating death, not grieving and mourning. And again, your pets and everything you do see again. So, so my mom literally took her last breath within 10 minutes. Before that happened, though, I'm noticing this group of people. Some of the people I recognized from this lifetime that crossed. Some of them I didn't, but of course, when she crossed, she recognized everybody. And the thing is that after there was this group of spirits that were like huddled together, like in a football huddle. And I'm like, what on earth are they doing up towards the head of her bed? And when they kind of separated, my mom's spirit was standing in the middle. Now, sometimes people will twirl up and leave through the ceiling. Sometimes they want to stay earthbound and walk out type thing. Everybody's is a little bit different. But And my mom is standing there and she's beaming, she's smiling from ear to ear. And to see her that happy and these people coming up one at a time, reconnecting with her, and I'm just smiling watching the whole thing because she looked so happy, and then all of a sudden I look over and I notice that my mom's physical body has died, and here I am grinning from ear to ear. So I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I better call the nurse in so that she can pronounce my mom's gone, because if she walks in and my mom's just died and I'm sitting here smiling, she's going to wonder what I did to her. That's just not a normal response. But you can't help but smile when you're in that elation and to see her. When I mentioned the galactic part of it, what appeared over there was these beautiful angels. There were people that she knew, but there were these other beings that appeared to be from somewhere else. They were tall. Their heads literally were almost cut by the ceiling. These were tall ceilings, like almost 12-foot ceilings. So they were very, very tall and brushing across. They had the white luminous hair that just was lit up by itself, and they had these gorgeous robes on. I don't know if they were males or females. They didn't matter. They were just gorgeous. And they walked along with the angels to assist. And if you think about it, we're all energy. If energy can't be created or destroyed, if you want to take it from a scientific angle, we are all energy. And there are so many stars that are sunshines to other solar systems that have planets just like ours. It would be ignorant on our part to think that we are the only ones. So when those beings finish out their lifetimes wherever they are at, when they finish, they have to have a place to go to. And these are the higher level beings. These aren't the cryptid looking things. They kind of go into a different dimension. But the thing is so when people talk about the aliens versus the humans, everybody's right. It all comes together like that. So thing is that I've got so much I could tell you.
I mean, yeah, no, you're telling us a lot. I mean, the hardest part for me, Lynn, it's just this. It's just like, and I applaud you for coming out with Colors Heaven, Colors of Heaven. I mean, it needs to be done. It needs to be done. But when people cross over, do you think that people have their own idea of heaven and that's what they go to? Or is there an absolute idea of heaven that is universal to everybody? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does. Different people mention different things like crossing over a bridge or going through a tunnel. And as we know, there are 3 different kinds of death. There's the near-death experience, sudden death, and natural death. And the way that I'm explaining this is the natural death, which most of us hopefully will have. But, people ask too about their pets, and it's like, you will see your pets. It's not in the first part of the reception, it's in a second part, or it's the other way around if you were better with pets than you were with people. So, but the thing is don't be surprised if you have a white rhinoceros running up to you to give you a hug. You're expecting a German Shepherd, because it's not just your pets from this lifetime, it's your pets from all of your lifetimes,
Wow.
different planets and things like that, and you will recognize them all as yours. The veil, you've crossed through. But the thing is that once people once they go to the other side, there's a process. There's usually a reception. That's for the natural death. When it's a sudden death, they don't come on strong like that. The person has to realize that they've died. I mean, it would be very overwhelming if they've just been in an accident, decapitated, and the spirit standing next to the car trying to climb back into the body because they left the tea on their stove when they left home and their baby's sleeping in the house. They're trying to bargain. So they have to send in one being to assist them and get them to realize, and then they get the reception and everything. Type thing. The NDEs, they don't get the reception that way because it's not their time to cross yet. And of course the natural death does get it. But there are different types of people that come here. There are the incarnates and the reincarnates. We're all incarnates. That means that we have volunteered to come here. We've completed to a high enough level that we don't have to come back here to Earth, because really being on Earth is like being in hell. I mean, this is a hard school.
Hard life.
It really is. And
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
yeah. So the difference is that the reincarnates, they will go, when everybody passes, they go through their reception and they go through their life review. There's also this tunnel of areas that they go through with cubbies, and the cubbies that are covered are missed opportunities that you could have taken, but you didn't. So, and then there are also ones that are opened, but then the reincarnates kind of go through a schooling, and then they're sent back through. The incarnates will go through a debriefing instead of a schooling. And then they can go off. There are homes in heaven similar to ours with these beautiful opalescent walls that stand, that you can actually walk through, but yet you have your little area. Or it turns kind of like into an airport where you're going down terminals to go wherever else it is that you want to go, type for that. So you don't just have to stay there. Plus, you can be 6 places simultaneously, which is another thing that I thought was interesting. The thing that my mom said about food
6 places simultaneously.
Yes.
Explain that to me, please, if you don't mind.
When we come to Earth, it's like an explosion, and there are 6 things that will land on the Earth of us simultaneously. We may not look the same, and then we all go back to the full consciousness. I forget the word right now off the top of my head. So, but we can also be 6 places at one time because we do everything with thought when they're on the other side. And that's one thing that my mom had said, that, and my father had a near-death experience, and he was telling me that when he was in this tunnel with all of these gold stars, like 1,000 times more than are in the sky, that he was with all 4 of his children and his new wife and my sister who was deceased. He got to see her briefly. And he knew that all of us were going to be okay, but that his wife, she had just come from Russia 6 months before. She didn't know how to drive, didn't know how to balance a checkbook, nothing. So they gave him the choice to come back in, and he did. So he's the one that said that he was able to be consciously with each one of us. He even told me what my shirt looked like. And it was a shirt that was one of my shirts that had pastel stripes on it. And I was in another state. He'd never seen that shirt, but he described it to me that it was on. And I'm like, you know what? I remember thinking about you that day, wondering about you. So I could feel that something was amiss. He had a clot that was traveling quickly up, and they had to go in and surgically remove it. So, and then he died in the recovery room because he was allergic to morphine. The morphine took him out. So, but then they resuscitated him. But the thing is that my mom and the food thing, I said to my mom one time, I said, Mom, don't you ever miss the taste of your potato salad that you used to make, or your brownies, or barbecued ribs? And she comes through like a megaphone and she says, we don't eat here. And I said, yeah, I know that. And I said, but don't you miss it?
Don't you miss it? Yeah.
Yeah. She's
Yeah.
like, we do everything by thought. She said, if we want to go somewhere, we think of it and we're instantaneously there. She says, if we want to be with one of our children or 2 of our children, we split, we're instantaneously in both of those places. She said,
kind of like Never Land, almost like in Hook.
Exactly. And she said, but the thing about food is that if they are missing something that they had on Earth, they have memory recall. So even like smell, people argue that, oh, well, spirits can't smell. No, they don't smell with an olfactory nerve. They smell with memory recall and on steroids. So when they want something, they can think of it, and it comes to them as if they are eating it, and the flavor in their mouth as if they're eating it. So, and if you think about it, think about right now what popping corn smells like. You can smell it, even though
taste it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's
yeah.
And people they try to dispute that, but it's different. But they still have it there. But so many times people, when they're close to death, they start talking about seeing loved ones. Sometimes even a year, as much as a year in advance. And I have a, for instance, that really brought it home for me. That if I had any question in my mind, I knew that I was right. That I was seeing what I was seeing, and all of those things. I had a lady on my unit, if I may share this. If you,
Please, absolutely. Yeah, no, you're absolutely fine.
Yeah, I had a lady on my unit that was blind, totally blind, didn't see shadows, nothing. She'd been blind for 10 years and she was actively declining, and she was on my unit. And
Mhm.
her son and daughter came up to the nurse's station and they said, Mom's talking to people in the room that aren't there. And I kind of expected that, so I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, let me walk with you down to your mama's room and see if I can do something to make her more comfortable, type thing. So when we walked into the room,
That's such a good way of putting it, Lynn, by the way. I love how you put that.
they're always sitting at a slant because they can breathe easier at a slant. And we walk in, Edna is looking up into the sky and she's taking something that's being handed to her, but it was so delicate that she was being very, very careful with it, like it was a snowflake or something, that she was trying not to damage it.
Right, yeah.
And she's smiling. And I said, Edna, I said, who's here? And she says, George. And her daughter had to sit down. She turned as white as a sheet and she said, well, George is my father. My father's been gone for X amount of years. And then Edna pipes up and she says, and he's glad that you're taking good care of Pixie. Pixie was Edna's poodle. When George passed away, Pixie the poodle had to be taken over by her son. She was an elderly dog and still very much alive at this point. And the son told me the story that how he has the dog. And he said to me, he said, do you think that my mom's hallucinating? And of course, as a medical professional, I can't come out and say, no, I think your dad's here. You know what I'm saying? But so I turned it around and I said, well, do you think she's hallucinating? And he said, well, I don't know. And I said, do you mind if I try something? I said, it's been my experience that loved ones do start to come forward. This is a good thing. They're going to help them transition. So whether you're here or not, they never die alone. They always have a whole group of people to love them and help them over. And I said, I'm not trying to change your beliefs, but do you mind if I try something? And he said, yes. And so I asked Edna, I said, Edna, can I ask George a question? And she nodded her head, yes. Now keep in mind, because she was transitioning, she could hear the telepathy from the spirit realm as well as hearing the physical. And so I said to her, I said, Edna, what color is your son's shirt? And she said, yellow. He was wearing a yellow Ralph Lauren polo shirt. George told her what color the shirt was because Edna couldn't see. She was so blind. I mean, she couldn't even see shadows, nothing. And in that moment,
so it was like a double, confirmation at that point, right?
Yes, exactly. And the son all of a sudden got it, and he says, "Hi, Dad." There's this period of time when people are passing, and on the physical side that we miss out on. That when that person's transitioning, we can speak to people on the other side through them because they can hear and respond. So, you can ask Uncle Bob what he did with the clock. You know what I'm saying? And he can tell you, oh, well, I buried it in the backyard, and it can come through the person. But so many people, because they are in their emotional state or their grief, they miss this opportunity to get to engage with people that are on the other side. And really, it's very, very comforting. I've had so many stories of things of being able to overhear when they're in this rallying stage where rallying being there are periods of time where you go into the room and their feet are kind of flaccid and their eyes sometimes are half open. It's like the lights are on, but nobody's home. They're almost impossible to rouse. And then all of a sudden, spirit comes all the way back in and their toes perk and their eyes brighten up and they start talking about some of the things that they saw on the other side. I had a young lady named April whose aunt was on my floor. I was in the room, and all of a sudden her aunt, she's in that rallying stage, and she says, April, when are you going to have those 2 baby girls? I want to see those 2 baby girls before I go home to Jesus. And April speaks up and she says, well, I can't have children. She said, I've been trying for 25 years and I'm in menopause. So I don't know, that's a nice thought. And her aunt got indignant with her. She said, no, these are your children. I see you holding one in each arm. They have blonde ringlets. She said, chocolate brown eyes and dimples, and they look like you.
Hmm.
And she's like, well, I don't know. She says, that would be wonderful, but I'm just not meant to have children. Lo and behold, 6 months later, April's father was on my unit. He had a hip surgery done, and then her uncle also passed away on my unit. So I got to see her on 3 occasions after that. The first one being about 6 months later. She walks in, she's got a baby bump. And of course, I couldn't resist. I'm like, hey there, what you got in there? And she's like, I've got identical twin girls. I'm like,
Just
really?
like what you said.
Yeah, she says, when my aunt was passing, I was pregnant at the time, but it was so early pregnant, like days pregnant, that I had no idea. So after the babies were born, I got to see them at about 18 months, got to see them again just to like 2.5. And there they were walking with mom with these blonde little bobbity curls. They had dimples and brown eyes, and they looked just like the mom. So, and they're holding her hand going down the hallway, just precious. So there are so many things that I've gotten to hear shared, from the other side as well. I also had a lady that I had one with Alzheimer's that could see angels. I had another one. If you'd like me to share some more stories, I'd be happy to do
Please,
that.
yeah, please, another one, please. Yeah. This is so fascinating because a lot of times people don't really get a glimpse into this side until it happens to them or somebody near them, you know what I mean? Obviously. And they actually have to deal with this kind of stuff. But please, we love all this stuff. So please, yeah,
Uh,
continue.
well, there's a dark side to paranormal. There's this white side also. So it's kind of
Of
nice
course.
sometimes. I had a
Mhm.
lady and her husband. They came to the facility that had multiple levels of care. There was a skilled facility, there was an assisted living facility, and the facility that they would come in on. And this lady came in with her husband because his health was failing. And it just so happened that then I call her Abigail in my book, she just so happened to fall and slip and fractured her hip.
Mm.
So she was placed on my unit, and she was there for a while. So we built up a rapport. And there was one day that I went in there, I worked the night shift. So I was going in to check on her. And she said to me, she says, Lynn, do you think I'm crazy? And of course, I thought she was joking. So I started teasing her. I'm like, define crazy, and she's like, no, I mean, really crazy. And I said, well, no, why would you say that? She said, well, I see my parents. She said, I know that they both passed away quite a long time ago, but I see them and it makes me happy. She said, and now the doctor says that I'm hallucinating and they're going to put me on medication for my hallucinations. And I don't want the medication to take away me getting to see my parents. So I told her, I said, well, and report, you are going home back to your apartment tomorrow, for one thing. I said, so that's good. And I said, and as your advocate, as long as you are of sound mind, which you are, you can refuse to take that medication if you really do not want it. So she was happy with that. She went back home. A while later, she came back to my unit. This time her health was declining. She had a terminal disease, and she was on my floor. This time she was talking about a woman and a little girl that would visit her in her room. And it was so real to her that she was sneaking cookies and cakes out of the dining room to bring back to her room to serve to the little girl. And this was creating a bug problem. So we had to stop her from doing that. But that's how real they were to her. So there was this one day that a friend of mine needed a day shift off, and I told her I would cover it for her. And all of the residents had gone back to their rooms, and I got the treatment card. I'm going down to start changing dressings and doing treatments. And I passed Abigail's room on my left-hand side. And I noticed that her door's open. She's sitting in her recliner. There's this big picture window with an air conditioner underneath it for anybody European, like the American air conditioners underneath in the hotels. And she's leaning forward with this yellow piece of butterscotch wrapped candy. And if anybody else had walked past, it would have looked like she was trying to feed the air conditioner the candy. But in front of her stood this little girl and this woman. I mean, this woman had jet black hair parted down the middle, very, very long. She had on a white peasant blouse. She had on a denim skirt. The little girl that stood in front of her also had this very, very straight black hair with bangs. She had on a light blue dress with a pinafore, little lacy socks, and Mary Jane shoes. She was very cute. And I walked past and I'm like, oh, wow, Abigail's got some visitors today, because Abigail and her husband were both only children. So they didn't have nieces and nephews or anybody to come visit them. And their parents were deceased. So they didn't have like relatives, a lot of relatives. So I remember thinking to myself how nice it was that she had visitors. And then I stepped forward about 5 steps and it hit me. I'm like, you know what? I don't remember those people signing in at the nurse's station. And of course, legally, you have to have a head count in the building just in case there's a fire, an emergency. The fire department needs to know how many people they need to get out. So I stepped back and I knocked on her door frame and she invited me in, and there was nobody there. Now, the way that I see ghosts is in my peripheral vision. I can see them as clear as I can see you. I can tell you their eye color, their hair color, what they've got on, all of that. When they're in front of me, they appear kind of opaque in the sense that, like, for instance, if you're in a mall shopping parking lot headed for JCPenney, you've got those big plate glass windows and you see your reflection in it, it looks kind of opaque. That's how they appear to me. That's what they look like. And if they're really, really up close, I see this energetic waffling to the air, like gas fumes or vapors coming off of a hot road, that waffling. So I'm standing in the room and I can see the waffling right here. And all of a sudden, Abigail says to me, she says, I want you to meet my friends. Isn't the little girl beautiful? And I said, yes, she is. And Abigail came forward in her chair with her eyes big like a deer in headlights. And she says, can you see them? And I nodded my head, yes. And she said, don't tell anybody because they'll think you're crazy and put you on medication. So here this woman, now she is heavily medicated for hallucinations, has the wherewithal to understand, to keep her mouth shut about seeing the ghosts and the supposed hallucinations, because they weren't hallucinations. They were spirits that were coming in. And of course, she crossed over, like probably about 6 months to 2 months later, not 6 months, but 6 weeks to 2 months later. And I thought that was very interesting that they, even though they were medicating her with Seroquel and Buspar, it wasn't taking that away.
Effect. Right.
Still seeing her parents because it wasn't hallucinations. So I also had, if you'd like me to share this story about one with Alzheimer's, and
Please.
This one it's interesting. Had a lady. I worked at this place for 10 years. It was about my 7th year at that time. And in the first 3 years that I worked there, or 4 years that I worked there, there was this one lady named Shirley that would come on the unit. And she would pass out library books to people on my floor, which was the skilled floor. Or she would come and leave Christmas ornaments on the doorknobs. She was very sweet, very active. And of course, she started to decline and ended up on my unit. And she had not spoken one word in 3 years, not one word. And I'm in the nurse's station. I've just come on shift. I'm going into the nurse's area to pull my charts to see if there are any new doctor's orders or anything that I need to be aware of, or new patients. And Shirley comes tooling along in her wheelchair and she stops in front of the nurse's station. So all of a sudden I hear somebody yelling out, a woman's voice, take me home, please, please take me home. And I turn around and come out, and there sits Shirley. And I'm looking down the hallway to see who it is that's yelling out. And they stopped. So I assumed that somebody had addressed it, because it stopped. So the way that Shirley was facing down a hallway, the very first door on the right, there was a woman that was actively passing. She actually passed 2 hours after this point that I'm talking about. So all of a sudden I turn, I go back into the nurse's station, and I hear again, take me home, please, please take me home. And I turn around and it's Shirley. It's Shirley calling out down to the hallway. And I hadn't heard her voice in 3 years. So I walked over to her and I pat her on her arm and I'm like, Miss Shirley, who are you asking to take you home? And she pointed in the direction of the woman that was passing and said, don't you see the angels? Aren't they beautiful? Well, I looked down the hallway. At first, I didn't see anything, but then I looked again. And there were angels and loved ones of this woman literally bulging out into the hallway through the wall that were coming in. This woman passed, and the lady with Alzheimer's saw them and recognized them and brought them to my attention. And so, people wonder sometimes when people have Alzheimer's, their soul is intact. Okay. Their brain is doing something else. And usually when you see a person with Alzheimer's spiritually, they're actually riding about a foot above, half in and half out of their body. So
I've always wondered that. Yeah, I've always wondered that because I always suspected that. Like they're like always riding that level of like in between our realm and the next realm. And like they're just riding that little that real thin razor line constantly.
Yes, they are. And that's how they appear when you see them that way. But they're, for people, their souls are intact inside. So when they do cross over, they don't cross over with the dementia. It gets left. Speaking of that, my sister, which is the book that and as always too, in the back of these books, I always put a self-help section. There is a self-help section that walks you through end-of-life directives, how to make a will and or health care power of attorney.
So important.
Without an attorney. You just
so important.
It is. And to have the name just right on your checking account, because if it's an or, they'll shut it down instead of an and.
Yes, they will.
The other way around. And to get into the nitty gritty, it's if you know that you're, I've gone into homes as a care manager. I worked for Humana also for 3 years. I know I've worked a lot of places, but I'm going to be 62 in May, so I've got to cut me some slack here. But I've done lots of things. But when people got their diagnosis for cancer, they would go curl up in the bed in fetal position with the little knitted beanie on their head, waiting for death. And I would come in and I would tell them, this is not a time. This is a time for you to get your things in order. It's important. If your roof needs to be repaired and you're leaving your loved one behind and you know that they won't be able to do that on their own, then it's time to make sure that that's taken care of. It's time to make sure that all of the things that you've let go, that needed to be fixed, or the repairs on the car, that all of that gets done. And people have appreciated that. You're still alive. It's time to get things in order. So I've helped a lot of people to do that. And and it is important that you do. Make a list. What are the codes to this, that, and the other thing? Who do I contact for life insurance? Who do I contact for the stocks? And even put the phone number.
You're so right. You're so right.
And don't forget to get your $250 from Social Security, the one-time payment for if there's a death. There's so many little things that people don't even realize that they're entitled to. But that is also in detail in the back of the book. And it gets into the nitty gritty. It talks about cremation or burial and how to get a cremation for under $1,000 with avoiding the middleman. It's got good stuff in there. Lots of good stuff. But
very important stuff that people don't really talk about because they're so afraid to talk about it. You know what I mean? Nobody really wants to talk about that. And I understand that. And, that's fine. But sometimes you do need to talk about it, and because things do happen, and things happen unexpectedly. I'm right here, number one. What do you say to those that have had multiple NDEs, multiple near-death experiences? Like, what is the universe trying to tell you? Why are they pulling you back and forth so many times?
Well, these are messengers. These are souls that come in with a very high frequency, and they know ahead of time that they're going to be bounced like a yo-yo. But the thing is to come back, to bring back messages that are important to help the earth evolve in their frequency and elevate the frequency, like what is happening right now, the elevation of the frequency. So many people don't even realize how strong their thoughts are, and how projecting certain things, even without saying them, your thought is an energy that comes out. But when you say it, it's a double whammy. Yes, and you manifest your future. and you negate a lot of wonderful things for yourself that you may not even realize. And that's a whole nother book. But that it's so important to be responsible about what you say, and to understand too that the angels in the universe, they don't understand joking and jest. So you need to be exact when you ask something. Like, for instance, the angels are always there to help you, but they won't help you unless you ask. So you need to ask just once. You ask multiple times. But when you need them to help you with something in particular, you must be detailed about that. You can't just say, oh, I want a hamburger. Well, you may get a hamburger, but it's got pickles on it and you hate pickles. Or you say, oh, then I want a hamburger with pickles and mayonnaise and ketchup and lettuce and onion. Well, then you get it and there's no bun, or the meat's not cooked. So you need to be that detailed what you want when you make your requests that way. And people, they don't even realize that. But like I said, that's a whole nother thing. I recently, I've got a book getting ready. It's in print. It's running a little bit behind. I'm publishing the 111 Becca Drive. And that is about a townhouse that I rented. Unbeknownst to me, I was in a hurry to move from one place into a smaller place. My son had just graduated from high school. He was moving off on his own, then ended up living with us anyway. But to move into this place, and I was looking for something that I could afford as a single mother. We all know what rents are right now. There's nothing under $1,000. So I found this place and I did the virtual tour through it. And the day that I went to actually physically walk through it, I had my lease in hand, my deposit to give to the lady, and I was going to sign on the dotted line there before this place disappeared. So I did that. But when we did the walkthrough, it was only like I only spent like 10 minutes in there. Excuse me, I didn't have my feelers on, and I should have. But I'm looking at it. Oh, it's nicely renovated. French doors on the back, a nice yard for my dog to use to go to the bathroom. It was clean. It was in a quiet dead end street. But it hadn't been cleaned completely yet from the previous tenants. The refrigerator was still dirty, and the inside of the oven and the toilets were gross. So they told me this was a Friday. They told me that all of that would be done by that Monday and that I could come and get the keys on that Monday. So I went and got the keys, on that Monday, and nothing had been cleaned. So I called the management company back and I said, look, there's nothing cleaned in here. I thought you said you were going to have your cleaning people come and clean it. And they're like, well, we sent her over there. I don't know what happened. So they were going to get in touch with her and send her again. But they ended up connecting us up together with our telephone number so that she would come at a time that was convenient. So instead of putting things away in the kitchen, I just brought boxes and sat it because I was waiting for her to clean. And I was upstairs in the room putting away clothes in my closet. And I noticed out of my peripheral vision, this little girl that comes and stands in the doorway. She's a ghost. She's got long dark hair, kind of wavy, one of those big bows in the back, the little shoes with the buttons on the side, like the 1800s kind of shoes, and a beautiful dress that she had on. And I said, hi. I figured, we've got a resident spirit. And she immediately looked over her shoulder and took off and to go and hide. And so I'm also downstairs in the kitchen. I'm putting some things away, and I'm hearing this mumbling sound. And I thought that it was people because the kitchen window touched up against the sidewalk, and then there was the parking lot, that somebody was on their phone out there trying to talk close so that nobody could hear them. So I'm on my way back with another load, taking it to the townhouse, and I get a call from the cleaning lady. And she said to me, I know this is going to sound really, really weird, but do not move into that townhouse. And I'm like, wow, why? I said, I've already signed the lease for a year. She says, that whole building is haunted. She said, but there's something about the one that you're moving into that has a vortex in the corner, which it did, that they come and go through. And I said, oh, are you talking about the little girl ghost? She said, oh, yeah. There's that one too, but that's not the one that is the problem. It's the slender, tall, dark-haired man with black eyes that mumbles in the bathroom. And then she explained that she was cleaning the toilet in the bathroom, putting the chemicals in, and he was mumbling over her and told her to get out. And she looked up and saw his face, and it was black. And so she took off, and she said, I can't come back there to clean. If you can
Mhm.
get a company to come and clean, I will bring you the money to pay them to clean, because I don't want to, come back there. Sure enough, it was the entire building was haunted. They had cat carcasses underneath the building. That this smell would come up through the air conditioner every once in a while of rotting corpse. But anyway,
Wow.
so I'm like, you've got to be joking. I mean, I've already been through this once, but I didn't have to live there. I never moved in. I never moved into that house, the Omnipresent house. I said, but now this time I'm stuck living here. So some good things came from it also, is the fact that I learned that when you're clearing a house that is connected to another residence, like apartments, upstairs, down, side by side, that all that these spirits do is they exit through the wall to the opposite apartments while you're saging the house or whatever you're doing. And sage, by the way, people, if it's a demonic thing, it pisses it off. It tickles it. It doesn't do anything. It just makes them mad and they come back with a vengeance. So I had to learn a way to not only clear them, but to create a force field, of energetic force field, by taking a bowl of salt with an embedded stone in it and putting it in the farthest corners, and of course salting the thresholds of the windows and the door. But you've got to make sure everything is out or you'll be holding it in with you. And the thing is there was this one ghost, and I'll be happy to send the picture to you after this is done, because I caught him on camera. He was going from townhouse to townhouse, pulling down women's underwear and crawling in bed with them during the night. I kid you. I heard it on my nightstand. Tap, 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 right next to my head. And of course, this is like the first or second night that we're there. And I'm thinking maybe there's just water condensation dripping from the what do they call those things that they put on the roof to catch the water and reroute it?
Yeah, the gutters, yeah.
Yeah, but maybe there was condensation dripping from there. I mean, this was a new place to me. But then I would hear the tap, tap, tap. Then I would start to feel my covers being pulled down. And then the dog had jumped on the bed or something, So then I'd pull them back up. I'd jerk them back up. And then all of a sudden, they'd start to come down again. And there were times that I woke up with my underwear half cocked, but there was did you not? I have a picture of this guy. And the funny thing is here he would go from townhouse to townhouse naked. It's the first time I've seen a naked ghost. Okay. Going from townhouse to townhouse, letting it all hang out, baby. Here I am, but now I get a picture of him. He becomes bashful and he covers his Johnson. So in this picture, you can see this naked ghost standing there with his hands over his Johnson. So it is G-rated. Your kids can see it too. But I will send you.
Please, yeah. I'd love to post that picture as we're talking about that.
Yeah.
Because that's just amazing. That's unbelievable. Talking about horror movies, one of the most profound horror movies that ever left a profound feeling upon me was The Entity. I don't know if you've ever seen that, where a woman is basically being oppressed by this entity and being raped constantly. I mean, from the very beginning of the movie, it's just like this woman is being raped by this ghost, and it's just a horrible scene. It was done in the late 70s, early 80s, but just done so well, but because it leaves such a mark on you. Like, how do you go into something like that, where knowing that this thing is out there like that and is waiting just to prey on you? Like, how do you go into how do you defend yourself against something like that? That's mainly what I'm asking.
What I have learned after multiple times of having to learn things, and I did try to get out of the lease, by the way, and the people who know it was haunted, I even sent them a picture of Weenie Man. But what I have that works with everything nefarious, everything, is because they lack certain emotions of love and joy and happiness. If you in your heart chakra, because it has been found out that the heart has like 50,000 times more memory than your brain does. And this is true. I mean, you can look it up. You drop into your heart and you imagine rings of pink hearts coming out filling the room or at the entities themselves, and it disarms them. They shrivel up and literally dart out of the room like there's a bad stench. They don't want to be around that. So even if you're in a room and you feel a lot of spirits enclosing on you, you can radiate that love out, and it's like repellent. It really works. It works with the negative, the grays that might come in and approach, and looking like somebody familiar because they've been doing that lately. They're really, really trying to bait people because of this transition and this change in energy and collective consciousness. Everything is moving upwards, but it works with everything. And the thing is, too, is people say, well, what if it looks like my mom? Well, if it really is your mother and your mother has crossed over and she's come back, she will relish in the love and she won't shirk away from it. That's how you determine if it's really the spirit of your mother or if it's something pretending to be your mother that's not nice. So, and that's what I've done. I say about the heart that the heart has 50,000 times more memory than the brain does. And this is something people can Google. There was a little girl that needed a heart transplant. She was about 11 years old. And there was another little girl that had been just murdered. She had terribly, and the assailant got away. They didn't know who it was. And the parents decided of the little girl that had gotten murdered to donate her organs. And the little girl that needed the heart was the recipient of this little girl's heart. So about 6 months later, the recipient started having night terrors about things. And within 2 years' time, the little girl that received the heart was able to identify the man, girl whose heart she had. You can look this up. No joke, people. And that's why, too, when people, they go through transplants and things like that, and even when they have open heart surgery done, sometimes they'll wake up and they'll speak with an accent, or all of a sudden they'll
different languages.
Or they'll want to start eating something that they hated, or all of a sudden they have an aversion to something that they don't, or all of a sudden they're smoking and they never did,
or artistic, and they all of a sudden they're like, yeah.
There is something with that carries, over that. And that's why the heart is so strong. And to radiate that love and stuff, my son was sleeping one night and he said that my mother, who approaches him frequently, but this time approached him like at 3 o'clock in the morning. She had 3 other beings with her that he did not recognize. And he's like, Grandma, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. I've got to get up in 2 hours and go to work. Can't you come back another time? And she just stood there, and he got indignant with her a little bit. And then finally, when she turned to walk away, he saw this reptilian tail coming out from the back of her. Ooh. That it wasn't really my mother visiting him, that it was something else. So of course he called me the next day and told me about it. So I told him what to do with the heart rings, and he does it, and it works all of the time too. So the good stay and the bad leave. Which also brings me to the book that I'm currently writing, Omnipresent, Gnome, Gnome, Place Like Home. My sister passed away a year ago, June. Out of 6 of us, thank you. I'm the only one left. I have a half sister and half brother, but in my immediately family with the same parents, I'm the only one left. All my brother, both of my sisters are gone. My dad, mom are over there, having a blast. By the way, I'm jealous, but yeah, but I know I'll see them again, so I'm okay with that. And I actually have more now than I even did when they were alive. We were all too busy. But the thing is that let's see, what was I going to say? Oh yeah. When I inherited my sister's house, she had been sick for a long time, battling cancer. Like 3 different times she beat it. Of course, when she died, she didn't die of cancer. The hospital overfilled her with fluid, with 70 pounds of fluid in 6 days, and she died from that. But it was unexpected. And prior to that, she was telling me that there were spirits in the house, and that no matter what she tried to do, the saging, having a blessing done, these spirits just didn't leave, and I thought, well, that's kind of odd. You might be doing something which people don't realize, that when you do clear a house, the person has to do some cleanup too. Like if they're an alcoholic and they want me to help shift their archon around, that organic's going to jump right back on them once they open up that beer and roll out the red carpet for them to come back. And people, their houses and stuff, your house has got to be clean. No clutter. If you want me to come
No
in,
outside influences or anything like that, right? Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
exactly. So when my sister passed away, like I said, unexpectedly, I had my half sister, my half sister Mary, fly in to help me kind of go through the papers and things. And my sister Mary decided to sleep in my sister Lisa's bed. And all of a sudden, I'm downstairs sleeping on the couch, and I overhear my sister humming a hymn, and she's praying. And this went on for like an hour and a half. And I'm like, wow, that's some kind of, I've heard of
Devotion.
This is kind of a weird bedtime ritual.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when she got up the next morning, I asked her, I said, oh, did you sleep okay? And she said, I was sleeping, and then I was awakened. And when I opened my eyes, it appeared like there was this wreath of faces floating over the bed. And it scared me. So I shut my eyes and I started praying to make it leave. And it didn't for a long time. And then finally it left. So that was one thing. So then Mary leaves and my son comes. My son and I went through the house with a fire component. That's my major one. I go through with a fire component because it sucks oxygen into the fire and will pull spirits into the fire, into the pan. They get stuck in something sticky on the bottom. And then you can see them in there. So we did that. Mm. So we cleared out the house. But yet there was still this thing in the house that was leaving dirt trails on the kitchen floor about 3 inches, and they would peak in the middle. They were consistently like this, and I'd keep cleaning them up, and I'm like, what the hell? Is it termites? But these were dirt trails on the floor, multiple, and I couldn't figure out where they were coming from. I thought, I checked my son's shoes, I'm like, he's, but he didn't have anything like a bottom that would collect it and make that peak thing on it. So my son and I are upstairs. My son's standing in the master bedroom doorway. I'm standing in the hallway bathroom doorway. And out of this third bedroom, we see this little thing come out, walks past me, walks past my son, and goes into the master bedroom. And I'm thinking to myself, that thing looks just like the banker on Harry Potter. Just as I'm thinking that, my son says to me, did you just see Hogwarts go by? And
validation.
Yep. Then he comes back out and he crosses back, goes into this third bedroom, and then comes back one more time and goes back into the bedroom. Look, blocky head, kind of flat. Yeah, the ears, the pointed ears that kind of go back, the whole 9 yards. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, what the hell? I didn't know anything about elementals and fae. That wasn't my thing. I did the paranormal thing, the dead people thing. I'm good. So, but this was something new to me. So I reached out to Brian Bowden, who was in Florida, and Jim, which I had mentioned to you before, Rupert, who was in South Carolina, and my son and I are in Louisiana. Well, Jim and Brian both do remote viewing. And I said, look, there is something else in this house that isn't leaving. I said, I've done everything that I know to do that would chase off demons and everything, and it's not working. So both of them told me that there was a fae that lived underneath the house in the dirt, and you would hear him mulling around when you would stand on the deck out front. And I thought that it was a coon or something under there, and that there was something in the house that was his, and that he was coming up from the ground through this stairwell thing up to this bedroom on the top floor because something was in that room that was his. And I'm like, oh my God, I know exactly what it is. Days earlier, when I had been there, my sister was there with me. We were sorting through papers in the filing cabinet. And there was this rock, nondescript rock about the size of my hand, kind of in a heart, sitting on the top of the filing cabinet with my sister's crystals, her crystal collection. And I remember picking it up because I was going to throw it out. I thought, why on earth would she have this ugly rock here? But when I picked that rock up, I kid you not, the energy shot up my arm and my teeth were burning in my mouth. The roots were like on fire. And I immediately dropped it down because I'm like, oh. and want to touch that again, we'll kind of leave that for last, and I'll take a shoe and kind of knock it in the trash can so I don't have. So when they said that there was something up there, I'm like, oh my God, I will bet you money that it's that rock, that energetic rock. And it turned out that the rock belonged to this fae who would stand. Am I allowed to cuss on here?
Yes.
Okay. He would stand with his face between these arches on the stairs, and he would say, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. That's what he called me. Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. And he'd call me a bitch. And he would curse at me and say all of these things because he hated us. I mean, my sister, he kind of created the demise that my sister stayed sick so long because she didn't realize that she had kidnapped his precious. You know what I mean? I'm sorry. My kids, I'd be sticking nails in them too. You know,
no, absolutely, yeah.
You know, so I told my son, I said, Brian had said, and Jim had said to take the rock outside and return it. And they mentioned that there was a shed behind the house, which there was. They were right. And to kind of place it in there since he's used to coming in and having it like indoors. So the next morning, my son goes to walk out the door and he's got the rock. He's got gloves on. He's holding it, you know, the rock to take it outside. And as he's walking, he's like, man, my legs are itchy because that little fae was behind him, flinging vines at him, spiritual vines at him, wrapping around his legs, trying to stop him from carrying off the rock. So my son took the rock and put it into the shed thing. And I might add too, just to back up, when my son saw the entity coming through 3 times, the third time when it came out of that third bedroom and it crossed into the master bedroom, in the ectoplasm that he left behind, which was a portal, were the faces in a wreath that my sister had originally seen hovering over.
You were saying earlier, yeah.
Yeah, and that he must have been standing next to the bed, holding them like his balloons. And I made the mistake of assuming that he kidnapped those people and were keeping them prisoner for his own entertainment. But it turns out that he was protecting them, that they were spirits that had passed with such low energy that they weren't able to cross over, or they didn't feel worthy to cross over. And he was collecting them so that some other more nefarious, darker being in those realms would not come and collect them. Because a lot of times, you know, when you go to hauntings, you know, there are people there, but there's always one that manipulates everybody.
Everything, yeah, the ringleader.
So he wanted to protect them from that. And now they're all crossed over and he's happy he doesn't have that responsibility anymore.
That's wild.
You know, of course, when my son went out with the rock, I opened the door and I'm like, okay, it's time to go. You know, I'm like, over these people, and most of them went, but not all of them. And so what we learned is that when you have an elemental or fae, they don't leave, you do. None of the church stuff, none of the rituals, none of that works on them because they were created when the earth was created. And they've been here ever since that time. He's even told me some things about Jesus because he was here. I mean, he was on the earth when Jesus told me about his hair color. He told me that Jesus has eyes that actually shift from a beautiful milky brown color to a sapphire blue, depending on what he's talking about, almost, that they can interchange. And said that he had like more of an olive complexion, like Middle Eastern. But anyway, so he was and they do believe in God, by the way. They call them Source. But so we made arrangements with him. We said, look, we're not going to be staying here. When we leave, you can come back in the house. But if you stay out here, we will leave you with some tobacco and some alcohol and some beignets and, you know, some other things as an offering for you to stay out of the house. And that worked. But we told him when we were leaving. Well, it just so happened the day that we were leaving, the upstairs bathroom sink had a leak. And I had to get a plumber, and it was on a holiday. So the plumber wasn't coming until that night. I couldn't leave the leak. It would have come through the first story roof, you know, ceiling back there. So I wasn't returning for months. So my son and I decided to go out and get some good Cajun food. And we came back, and all of a sudden we can hear Bob, who I've asked. How we came up with Bob is that I asked him what his name was, and normally they won't tell you, but he did tell us, but it was blah, 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 blah. I'm like, there's no way.
That's close enough, Bob.
Yeah. Like, look, and we call you like Tim or Jim or Bob? And he said Bob was fine, so we call him Bob. So you could hear Bob coming up from the back of the house, grumbling under his breath, and he sounded just like the Tasmanian devil on Bugs Bunny. That coming forward. I'm like, oh my gosh. He thought that we were leaving, and he was expecting to come back into the house. So we again had to make good on our promise and promise some other things that we were going to leave him. He loves beignets and Oreos. So that evening, the plumber came, he fixed the sink. My son was loading up my sister's truck with some very heavy items. And I hear in the front yard, I hear all of these obscenities being screamed out. And so I immediately rushed to the door thinking that my son has hurt himself. And I opened the door, my son's face is like right there. And I said, well, what happened? And he said, what do you mean? I said, why were you yelling all of those obscenities? And he said, that wasn't me. And I said, okay, well, did you hear it? And he said, no. So he comes in the house. The next morning, my son's battery, he needed to charge it off of the truck, and he kept his engine running. He was putting in the cord so that I could plug in my phone so that I could navigate with the GPS. And all of a sudden, I'm on the front deck, and I overhear, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you.
Whoa.
And I walk over to my son with the door open, and I said, is everything okay? And he says, yes. And I said, well, why are you cussing? And he said, it's not me. And we both heard, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. Bob was literally standing in the doorway of this shed making those comments because he thought we were leaving. The engines were started. He thought we were leaving, and he wanted to make sure that we made good on our promise and brought him all of the tobacco and alcohol and everything else that we had promised him that we would do. Since then, we have built a rapport, and some very beautiful things have happened. The yard is actually, he has created these triangular vortexes all over the yard with crystals that he has. He places them, look like a crystal, sorry, I don't know what that.
That was okay.
Oh, can you still see me?
Yeah, it was a little blip of the matrix, that's all.
Okay, all right. He instead of squares, they're triangles, and they have a gold and a silver thread and a blue one in their portals. I mean, the yard at night fills with beautiful spirit creatures of bears and deers and things like that are just gorgeous. But also some of the fae come over. I've got pictures of those too that will blow your mind. They're
love to see those.
Getting ready to put them in my book, but I can tell you, you've never seen anything like this. So anyway, so he's done these beautiful things in the yard so that the spirits can transport through them and things like that. And we found out that his rock is his companion. He loves his rock. He loves stories, and his rock tells him stories of ancient times. So I've made a point that whenever I go to gem shows that I pick him up some turquoise from Madagascar and some of this from Mexico and some of this from other places so that I can bring him the rocks so that he can hear all new stories from all over. And but he has become such he's a family member. I mean, he follows me around. People see him. You can ask Brian Bowden, he's seen him. You can ask Jim Rupert, he's seen him.
It's like almost like a spirit guide at this point, right?
Yes, he is. And he's cheeky. And the thing about it is that when he brings the fae into that yard, they have such a childlike wonder about them that hasn't been tarnished or ruined by humanness.
Adultness, yeah.
It exudes from them, and they're just curious. And so I'm in the process of doing some things in the house because my sister was kind of dilapidated, and because she couldn't help it, she didn't have the money to fix it, and she was sick for a long time. So I'm redoing that to eventually have an Airbnb for people to come out. I mean, it's got a huge 2-acre mowed lot so that people can come with their campers and line them up. I mean, the whole yard could fill up with probably 20 of them, and they can stay inside the house too if they want to. But to do that for investigations, because souls do cross through there. But more so than being haunted, it's enchanted. And some of the beautiful things that we've seen out there just would totally blow your mind. And I've been asked by him to write 3 books to bridge the gap between the humans and the Fae, because religion has demonized them so much that people think that they're demons, and they're not. And the thing is that Lucifer, who is not Satan, they're two separate deities. And Lucifer, when he was in heaven, is a beautiful angel, very intelligent angel of music. And of course, he decided to take things in his own hands and got kicked out. So when he got kicked out, he ruled the elementals and the Fae, and blindly they followed him. Now they realize that they made a mistake, and they're trying to get back on track, because they were actually created to be helpers to the humans on this earth. Bob told me that if you take a seed, going to plant, if you spit on it, the seed can analyze your saliva, and anything that you are having a deficit in your body, when you plant it, whatever vegetable comes with that will have the components in it for you to eat, to balance out your system that way. Isn't that amazing?
That is amazing.
Yeah.
It's
just unbelievable. I mean, and so many other things. He's told me about the crystalline water cities where people actually live. They don't eat food anymore. And about the towers. He's told me about the bioluminescent beaches that the night fae create. They're like big giant mounds, like mud mounds that they go in and out of during the daytime where they sleep. I mean, so many things that that I've learned from him. And he gets emotional over things. Even he's just, like I said, he has that childlike wonder about his heart that nobody could say. I mean, he could be nasty too, obviously, right. But because we have built this rapport and we have this trust, mutual trust, he knows that I'll follow through with my word. He knows that I would never let anybody touch his rock ever again, that it's his property and he can count on that. Yeah, talk about a fascinating.
Wow. Yeah.
The elevation of our frequencies, they actually live on Earth as we do, but because their frequency is higher than ours, we can't see them.
That's so, yeah. Yeah.
So now that our frequencies are elevating, and as we talked about before, people are going to start to fall away that have those that don't choose to elevate their frequency, or they're of a lower frequency, and everyone is going to start to see the Fae again. Everyone's going to start to see them, and also, those filters between are going to start to efface as well, and we will have 2 new senses in addition to the 5 that we already have, one of which is telepathy, that will be added in, and one other one that I haven't been told what that is yet. But all of these things, are coming very soon. So
it's interesting.
I argued with him at one point and said, "Are you sure you want me to write a book about this?" I said, because people are going to want to own you like a pet. They're going to turn you into the genie with the bottle type thing.
Yes.
He insisted. He said, "No, this is the time. The information will get to the right people." He said, "And that it will, and it will plant seeds for other people to start to become and elevate themselves even after we've done that." So, because right now we are all, you and me and everybody listening to this, we are the light bearers and the light anchors. We're also the bridges between the gaps. So it's important, that.
It's to spread the message. It's to spread the message constantly. That's what I always say. You know what I mean? Getting the word out, because that's half the battle in itself, right? It's getting the word out. It's half the battle. Lynn, you've been such an amazing guest. Thank you so much for coming on tonight. If you could tell everybody where they can find all of your stuff. I know your website, lynnmonet.com, but is that where the central hub for, per se, is for where they can get all your information and all the books?
Yes, basically, yes. My books are also on Amazon, but not all of them. I think that Amazon has enough money already that the other on my website, considering he pays penny. Yeah, we won't even go there. But so there are some books that are solely on my website, and there are other ones also on Amazon. There is an email that you can reach out to me if you need me. I currently, I've been on a show called Beyond Belief with George Norrie that is currently streaming on Gaia as we speak. So watch it, give me a thumbs up, make a comment, so that they have me come back and get to do a second part of that.
Absolutely.
So, and that's where you can find me. I just want to make it clear to people too that I've had to recently draw back on a little bit of things. Is if you have a demon problem, call somebody else. I don't do demons. I can do demons, but because of
that's not your forte.
No, well, because of the backlash that you saw with afterwards for weeks and months afterwards, I will only do it for a family member or a really, really close friend if need be. So if you've been told that you've got demon problems or that you've got stuff attached, you need to call somebody else. I can do attachments, but demons are above my pay grade.
No, that's fine. No, that's great. No, you can find everything at lynnmonet.com. That's LYNNMONET.com. Make sure you go there and check out all the books. They're all right there for you to, pick up right there. Lynn, you are an amazing guest. You always continue to amaze me with your knowledge and your experiences. And of course, we'll always have to have you come back on another, future episode of Dark Fringe Radio. But again, thank you for coming on tonight, and thank you for spreading all this information and knowledge. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so very much for having me, and it would be my pleasure to come back.
Wonderful. Lynn, thank you so much. Again, you can pick up everything at lynnmonet.com. That's LYNNMONET.com. Make sure you pick up the books and Colors of Heaven, Gap, everything in between, Omnipresent. Please check those out, and we really appreciate it. Thanks so much, Lynn, for coming on Dark Fringe Radio.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.